What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Ino regrets hurting Naruto? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments, and also check the descriptio JN to original creator of this beautiful creation. Uzumaki Naruto, Shinobi of Konohagakure, recently promoted to Anbu, given the uncomfortably fitting name of Fox. Slowly, gradually closing in on his ultimate goal of becoming the Rokudame Hokage. However, today, all of his hope, all of his dreams, every single up in his life gave way to a pair of unfortunate circumstances on this day. The first, and most obvious of these circumstances was the fact that today was October 10th, the day that he was conceived and condemned at the same time. Though the surprise that he had received on that day caused his usually depressed mood towards this day to sink even lower. Even though it had been half a year ago, it had seemed like yesterday that he had finally dragged his first true friend back to Konoha. It came to a bloody, violent end when Naruto and Sasuke, intentional or not, worked together to finally take out Uchiha Itachi, ending Sasuke's war against his brother. After finally bringing him back, after spending a month in the hospital, and after a meeting among the elders, clan heads, and the Hokage herself, in which Sasuke was reluctantly excused for all transgressions on the pretext that he acted within the best interests of his clan, which would in turn only improve Konoha, Sasuke was reinstated as a shinobi of Konoha. Naruto had received a wide array of reactions to bringing back the official last Uchiha back to the village. The elders, although they still resented him because it was him, still had to respect the fact that he had accomplished his mission, and looked at him with begrudging indifference, a good reprieve from the usual glares that they gave him, though not by much. The shinobi of Konoha openly acknowledged the fact that he had brought back one of the geniuses of Konoha. His friends all had different reactions to this, but they all basically said the same thing: good job, Naruto. Rock Lee hadn't changed. Looking at him was still the same as looking at a smaller Maida guy. He still trained constantly, recently surpassing his sensei's expectations and opening the 8-gate far earlier than Guy had ever dreamed of. He still wore that appallingly green jumpsuit. He had 8 wrapped around his waist, absurdly heavy weights on his legs concealed by those orange leg warmers. Eyebrows still incredibly bushy. Hair still in one of the most unique bowl cuts ever seen in the world. The only truly normal part of his appearance was the Jonin vest that he proudly wore. He had been one of his loudest supporters on his return with Sasuke, though he did quiet down just long enough to whisper to Naruto, "Good job. You kept your promise to Sakura-san." He gave him the most discreet, nice guy pose that he could muster, though the gleam that came off of the perfect teeth of Lee left Naruto rubbing his eyes for the next hour. Hyuga Neji had become involved in the training of Hyuga Hanabi, the current heir of the Hyuga clan. Naruto had noticed how much the Hyuga genius had changed since their fight during the Chunin exams, evident by how he had laid off of his cousin over the years. Neji had also acknowledged Naruto's accomplishment, although he seemed completely indifferent towards the situation. Ten, also a Jonin, had taken a part-time job at the academy to teach the students about basic all-around weapons that every ninja uses. She had tried, on numerous occasions, to win the heart, or at least the attention, of a certain teammate, but eventually gave up, realizing a lost cause when she saw one. She too supported Naruto. Aburame Shino was just as mysterious as he had always been, and only gave Naruto a short nod upon his return. Naruto wasn't exactly sure what to make of the Jonin bug user's reaction, but decided to simply pass it off as a good mark for him. Hyuga Hinata. Naruto didn't think that there was any question as to how the timid Hyuga would react to anything he did. And although he was still oblivious to something that was blindingly obvious to everyone else, that being the recently promoted Jonin's undying affection for him, he still respected the girl for her complete trust and confidence in him and his abilities. Inuzuka Kiba, he and his faithful partner, Akamaru, were training with his older sister, Hana, in becoming professional trackers, and eventually succeeding his sister. He had also joined the ranks of Konoha's Anbu squad, as he felt that his abilities would be much more useful, and probably more appreciated, there. As one of the ninjas who were on the original Sasuke retrieval mission, he still harbored some hostility towards the last Uchiha. So while he still accepted what Naruto had done in the name of Konoha, he did so with a very angry scowl, though he made it very clear to Naruto that it wasn't directed at him. Nara Shikamaru had already established himself as quite possibly the laziest ninja in Konoha since Nara Shikaku, so the simple fact that he was the first of the Konoha 12, if you choose to include Sasuke, to be promoted to Chunin was already a fact that still blew Naruto's mind. Then he was promoted to Jonin. Then he was given a genin team to look after. The only upside to that would be the fact that he was given the next generation Ino Shikacho trio as a team. Such a troublesome team to have to deal with, Naruto remembered him saying. But at least they were born to be able to work together, right? His reaction to Sasuke's return was little different from his reaction to everything else. It is kinda troublesome that you had to accomplish this mission about 8 years too late, but at least you did. Akamichi Choji, also Jonin, simply nodded his head in agreement with Shikamaru, whilst shoving another handful of chips into his mouth. Naruto simply smiled and asked if he wanted to join him in a celebratory visit to Ichiraku Ramen later that day. Yamanaka Ino was doing quite well for herself. Though if you can call being the only apprentice to Morino Ibiki, head of the Anbu torture and interrogation force, the most sadistic bastard that Naruto had ever laid eyes upon, doing quite well for yourself, you must be either just as sadistic, or equally as insane. Naruto figured that Ino was the former, though he would never tell her that to her face. After all, he had a lot to be thankful for because of Ino. She was the one who had pushed for his acceptance into the Anbu, being an Anbu herself, and she was always there whenever he needed a helping hand with something or if Kiba wasn't around. He wasn't sure just why she was doing this, but he could remember that it started around the time he confessed that the main reason that he was trying to bring Sasuke back was because of a promise he made to Sakura. Ino, who had already given up on Sasuke immediately after she heard of his defection, immediately took pity on the boy. She figured that he knew that if he brought Sasuke back, Sakura would not leave his side. And considering how long he had been chasing after her, that must not have been an easy thing to admit to himself. So she made herself visible to him. After all, he was everything that a woman would want. Strong, good-looking, extremely caring and determined to whatever he set his mind to, and fun-loving. Granted, his undying love for ramen was still something that she would eventually have to fix on him. She was up for any challenge that would present itself to her for the sake of her friend. The fact that he never responded to her subtle advances never once deterred her. Though her advances did come less and less. Haruno Sakura. Her reaction had completely thrown Naruto off. Simply because there was no reaction. The moment he stepped through the gates, an injured and unconscious Sasuke on his shoulders, she had immediately taken Sasuke to the hospital, completely ignoring Naruto's presence. Naruto didn't blame her then. After all, if he were in her shoes, he probably would have done the same thing. Then the month came and went. Sasuke was finally cleared to leave the hospital, and Sakura was with him, practically every step of the way. What really got to Naruto was the fact that Sakura hadn't said a word to him during the entire month. Sure, she was needed at the hospital to make sure that the Uchiha genius survived, but whenever he would stop by to visit, Sakura would simply get up and walk out of the room, claiming to have other work to do. The 5 months after Sasuke was released were torture for Naruto. Every time he attempted to talk with Sakura, she would run off, saying that she was going to visit Sasuke, just to make sure that he was okay. Then there were the countless missions that Sakura had requested that she and Sasuke do, under the pretext that he needed to get back into the groove. She also requested that it be them alone, as he didn't need to be around too many faces that he was hostile towards at the moment, once again leaving Naruto out of the loop, which only further pushed him in the direction of Anbu. It also didn't help that the elders saw fit to give Sasuke the rank of Jonin as soon as he was healthy enough to do missions. But all of that were just drops in the lake compared to the atomic bomb that Sakura had just dropped into Naruto that morning. He had just come out of the Ichiraku ramen booth for his morning serving of ramen, thankful for once that it was indeed festival day, as most of the villagers were in the newer parts of town either preparing the festival, or preparing for the festival. He was about to head for the Hokage Tower and see if Tsunade had some kind of mission for him. Anything to keep him away from the village for the day. However, to his immediate shock, he saw Sakura running up to him, looking like a schoolgirl that had just been asked by the most popular guy in the academy to the dance. Naruto. He smiled widely. Sakura-chan is actually talking to me. I can't believe it. Hi, Sakura-chan. Is there something you needed? Sakura caught her breath before finally looking up at Naruto and, speaking in an overly excited tone, said, "Sasuke and I are getting married." And that leads us to the present. Naruto, sitting on top of the Yondaime Hokage's stone head, looking down at the village as it carried on with its day-long festival. Never before had he felt so depressed. Even his dream of one day becoming Hokage couldn't lighten the mood for the blonde-haired boy. Somewhere deep within him, part of him actually knew that this was how it would turn out. No matter what he did, no matter who he had hurt, Sasuke still remained the center of the Konoha universe. Yes, there were a few there who shared his opinions that Sasuke shouldn't have been treated like he was some sort of god, but in comparison to the overwhelming number of Uchiha supporters, they might as well been ants in a jungle. The years since he had graduated from the academy had given him time to find something that many said that he didn't have, though he only begun actively searching for it during his 2.5-year training venture with Jiraiya, the part of his brain that dealt with thinking. And although it may not have seemed that way to many, if not all, of his peers, he did indeed think about the things that happened around him. After all, he seriously doubted that he wouldn't have made the promise to Sakura if he hadn't been thinking about how she felt about the Uchiha traitor. So, on top of the Hokage monument, he tried to think about what the village, what Sakura had seen in the boy so much, that they were willing to completely excuse all of his sins, all of his transgressions, even going so far as to promote him. Yes, they may have been friends, and yes, he may have forgiven his friend for what he did, but he was also completely conscious that if it had been him that had committed all of these acts, he wouldn't have even been let back into the village. He had spent damn near his whole life trying to reach the point that he is now. The glares came less and less, the open insults diminished to almost nothing, and the elders accepted him enough to allow him to rise in the ranks of shinobi. And yet, Sasuke basically spit on the name of Konoha, but just about everyone welcomed him back with open arms. His thoughts carried him back to Sakura, but it didn't take much thought to figure her out. He basically summed her up in one sentence. I never had a chance with her. He wasn't exactly sure when her heart became so dead set on winning over the last Uchiha. Most of the time after and during their academy years, her affections towards Sasuke were simply puppy love. However, sometime during their Team 7 time, she had grown something more for the boy. And as much as Naruto had wished that she would have let it go and turned her attention to him, somewhere, he knew that it would not be possible. So here he was, atop the massive visage of the fourth, looking down upon the village that accepted Sasuke but shunned him all because of who they were. In another part of the village, where the hell is he? Clad in her usual purple tank top and purple skirt with black shorts underneath, because she felt that the standard issue Anbu uniform she had been given should only be worn when doing actual Anbu-worthy missions. Yamanaka Ino strolled her way through the streets of Konoha, searching for another blonde-haired, blue-eyed Anbu member. Considering that there was a giant festival going on, she would have thought that, in spite of the sheer number of people that would be in attendance, it would have been easy to find the only ninja that wore colors that made Rock Lee look like an actual ninja. However, she was shocked, and slightly perturbed, to find that her colleague was nowhere to be found. She had asked a few people at the festival if any of them had seen him anywhere, and though she had gotten simple, "I don't knows" from her friends, she became somewhat confused with some of the older generations, which began with, "That brat had better not show his face here," and only got worse as she went on. She had spent some time with Naruto before his induction into the Anbu, even before he admitted his reasons for wanting to bring back Sasuke, so she was not completely oblivious to the glares and stares that he received from the villagers. Back during their genin days, she had simply passed it off as their reaction towards all of his pranks. Which she thought wasn't all that bad. His remodeling of the Hokage monument actually prodded a nice fit of laughter from her. Anyway, as the years went by, the memories of his past, good-humored pranks gave way to an avalanche of surprising deeds from the boy, including the completion of his first C rank, upgraded to B rank, mission, the first among the 3 rookie teams, and his unexpected victory over last year's #1 rookie, the Hyuga genius, Hyuga Neji. However, the stares continued to come to him. Even after his 2.5-year training trip, they came, though not in the numbers that they usually came in. At first, she thought that it was extremely childish for them to continue to hold a grudge against him simply because of some harmless pranks that he made when he was younger. This was about the time when she began to suspect that there was some sort of deeper reason towards their hate for Naruto. It only seemed a little strange that he always seemed to disappear on this particular day. Ino, however, wasn't going to put up with her partner's mood anymore. When her partner wasn't in a good mood, his performance suffered greatly, which meant that their team suffered as well. No, today she would make sure that her teammate would have at least a halfway decent time today. Now if only she could find him. After an hour of searching, she began to use at least a little bit of her intuition. Okay, he isn't in his apartment, he isn't at the ramen shop, and the Hokage hasn't seen him all day, so he wasn't out on any missions. So where else could he be? She closed her eyes for a minute, collecting her thoughts, then opened them back up and took off. If I were as obsessed with becoming Hokage as he was, where would I go to be alone? Her answer led her to the top of the Hokage monument, and sitting on top of the head of the Yondaime was Uzumaki Naruto. She was extremely grateful that his choice of clothing had taken a turn for the better since he came back. She remembered when he returned to Konoha after his training trip with Jiraiya. His clothing, while still atrociously orange, had been extremely toned down since his academy and genin years, and he had all but eliminated it from his clothing altogether with his present uniform, though it was still present in the form of streaks down the sides of his black pants, which continued up the sides of his black sleeveless shirt and onto the shoulders. He actually looks like a real ninja now. She remembered thinking to herself when she saw his new outfit. She walked up behind him, not bothering to conceal her presence from him. "Oi, Naruto." Naruto stiffened for a second before turning his head back to greet her. "Oh, hey there Ino. What are you doing here?" After spending just a little bit of time with the boy, Yamanaka Ino, being the expert reader of faces that she was training to be, already knew about the mask that Naruto had tried to put on at that moment. She was also aware of the fact that whatever was plaguing him would come out whenever he was ready to let it out. So she simply carried on the conversation as if everything were normal. "Looking for you, you idiot. Why else would I be coming up here all by myself? And before you ask, the reason I came here looking for you is because I figured that a Hokage-obsessed person like yourself would probably find this place to be most comforting." Naruto let out a light laugh before scratching the back of his head. "Yay, I suppose you got me there. It is a great place to be. If I could, I'd probably live up here." Ino took a seat next to him and stared out over the village. "Yay, it is an awesome view. I remember the last time I was up here, when we were trying to stop that Genu guy. I didn't get a chance to truly appreciate the view that you can get from up here then." Naruto simply nodded at the statement. This caused Ino to look over at him a little more. Even though she knew that there was indeed the mask, a silent Naruto was not something that she could deal with. "Listen, I'm sorry if I brought up a sore subject for you. Sakura told me about how close you were to him." She didn't miss the slight tensing up that occurred in her teammate when she mentioned the pink-haired medical nin. "So it's about Billboard Brow. What is it, Naruto?" Naruto then looked over at her, allowing a bit of his mask to come off, revealing just a hint of sadness in his eyes. Ino's eyes widened. He had never let this amount of pure emotion show in front of anyone that she could remember, much less her. Sakura and Sasuke are getting married. Ino was, to say the least, shocked. Not because Sasuke had decided to marry Sakura. She saw that one coming from a mile away. No, her shock came from the fact that she had been completely wrong about Naruto. He still thought that he had a chance with Forehead? This would be one opinion that she wouldn't keep to herself, however. "And you are surprised by this? Despite everything that has happened, everything that Sasuke has done, the village as a whole still accepts him as a ninja. From what I have seen, Sakura has spent more time with him than she has with her own family. You should have known way before you brought him back that she wasn't going to give up on him." She turned her head away from him and sighed. "I knew you were an idiot, but I had no idea that you could be this idiotic." "Yeah, I know. Pathetic, aren't I?" Ino turned her eyes back to him, now hugging his knees to his chest, hiding most of his face behind his knees. Only his eyes were visible. Even though part of me knew that no matter how good I treated her, no matter how many favors I did for her, no matter how many times I saved her life, she would only see me as a friend, I continued to chase after her, hoping that she would just forget about him and turn to me. He let out a small, sarcastic laugh. What a wild goose chase that turned out to be, huh? Ino started to feel bad for her partner, and then remembered why she was up here in the first place. It was bad enough that he was feeling like crap, but the fact that it was starting to rub off on her was not something she was going to accept. She stood up and turned to him in a manner not unlike a mother would when she was demanding her child to go outside and play rather than stay in and watch TV all day. All right, that's it. Uzumaki Naruto, you are coming with me. She grabbed his arm and pulled him to his feet in a not-so-gentle manner. Naruto was immediately dragged out of his depression by her sudden actions. Huh? Hey, Ino, where are we going? He had managed to get in step with her pace after a few feet of stumbling while she dragged him along. I really don't feel like going to the festival today. I know. That's why we aren't going to the festival. She walked along the path leading down to the village, an arm wrapped around the arm of a semi-reluctant Naruto. You are going to take me to get something to eat. And you are going to pay for the both of us. Now Naruto got scared. But Ino, you already know about. Ino cut him off right there. Yes, I already know about what the villagers think of you. She remembered the reaction that he had received from one of her favorite restaurants. They had just come back from a particularly gruesome mission in the Land of Water, and they were, to say the least, a little hungry. She had suggested one of her regular spots, and although he had his initial misgivings about it, which she simply attributed to his ramen obsession, he eventually gave in to her wishes. At first it was just the man that was supposed to show them to their seats. The moment he saw Naruto, he walked straight up to them, and in the most sincere voice that he could force out of his mouth, said, "I'm sorry, but we are completely booked for the night." Ino stole a glance over his shoulder, and was not surprised to see that there were indeed rows of empty tables in the restaurant. She came here all of the time, as this was one of the healthier restaurants in the village, so she was well aware of the amount of customers that they received at certain times. And aside from the fact that it was never usually full at this time of day, the restaurant didn't take reservations either. Apparently, he was a new employee and wasn't aware of her frequent visits. Don't kid around with me. You don't take reservations, and there are plenty of open tables for us. Just show us to our seats. He allowed his true feelings to show through and sent an angry scowl towards Naruto. We do not serve the likes of him. And if you wish to take his side, then I suggest that you leave right along with him. Ino was angry, to say the least, and would have unleashed hell upon the poor, unsuspecting soul if Naruto hadn't picked that moment to speak up. It's okay, Ino. I don't mind. I'll see ya tomorrow, okay? And with that he jumped onto a nearby building and bounded off to his apartment. She watched him jump off, slightly worried about her teammate. That was weird. It's almost as if he was used to this kind of reaction. She felt her anger return tenfold when she heard the man say, "Oh, how about that? One of our reservations just cancelled. Shall I show you to your seat?" There is now a picture of her in front of the restaurant, banning her from ever entering. So she was familiar with his reluctance for eating in other places. And as much as she didn't want to, this was supposed to be about cheering him up. That is why you are going to treat me too. She inwardly cringed at the fact that she was even considering this, but swallowed hard and said, "Ichiraku ramen." Naruto stared at her in complete shock, even as he allowed her to pull her along with him. What's the matter with you? Ino felt his stare upon her. You never want to eat ramen with me. Every time I ask you, you always say that you want to keep your perfect figure and go somewhere else. Maybe I just haven't given it a fair chance before. She looked back at him with a friendly smile. All Naruto could do was smile back. Besides, I would think that you would actually like to enjoy your birthday for once. Naruto stopped right there. You, no? She turned around and faced him. I did a little digging and eventually found it out. Though I was surprised to find that your birthday and the festival were on the same day. He just gave a light smile and nodded at her. So today, I will ensure that you actually have a happy birthday. She sighed and grabbed his arm. Tell you what, since it is your birthday, it will be all the ramen that you can eat, on me. Naruto smiled a little wider, and Ino was glad to see that it wasn't forced, wasn't just a mask to try to hide his true feelings. There is still something there, but at least I can make him forget about it for now. The first was with the bowl of miso ramen that was sitting in front of her. Yes, she was supposed to be here for Naruto, but the closer that she had gotten to the ramen stand, the more she was beginning to doubt her own judgment. Is it really worth it? After all, I have been voted #1 healthiest ninja 5 years running. Am I really going to jeopardize that just so Naruto can be happy? Then she had engaged in a staring contest with the boy sitting next to her, inhaling his 4th bowl of barbecue beef ramen. And although his eating methods made her want to vomit what little she kept in her stomach, she was extremely grateful that he was at least eating the way he usually did. She had indeed bore witness to his usual eating ritual during some of their extended missions as Anbu. No matter what the situation was, he ate the same way every time, high in quantity and with much gusto. During their last mission, however, he had toned down his eating severely. When she asked about it, he simply replied that he thought he should enjoy his ramen for once. She didn't buy it one bit, especially considering that he had been deathly silent for the entire mission. Yes, she was glad that he had begun eating the same way he used to. She even welcomed the obscenely loud slurping noises that accompanied this. Her staring then turned to the people that were serving them. She hadn't met them personally before, but she was grateful to them for numerous reasons. As a boy, Ino had remembered with a slight tinge of guilt, Naruto never had any real friends. She had seen him on the playground many times, and although he did play with Kiba, Shikamaru, and Choji, it would never really last as their parents always scolded him for going near their kids. The only reason her parents never scolded him was the simple fact that she never went near him to begin with. Part of her regretted never doing so for his sake, and yet another part of her was glad that she never did, also for his sake. Her father was neutral towards him, but her mother was particularly strict towards him. And seeing as she was the one who usually came to pick her up, she would have been damned if she allowed him to go through the torture of listening to her mother yell at him. She had already experienced it more than enough, and it was far more torturous than going through her father's mind training. Iruka-sensei was one of the only adults that actually accepted him, but she didn't really count him, as most of the older ninja community was generally neutral towards him. The only real people that he felt comfortable around were the people who ran the ramen stand. Tucci and his daughter Ayame were actually grateful for his presence, and not just because he was one of their most reliable customers. They were kind of like an uncle and aunt to him, giving him small little pieces of advice whenever he needed it, sometimes even allowing him to sleep in the shop whenever he couldn't go home when a few of the villagers got particularly rowdy and surrounded his apartment, waiting to stone the boy, not necessarily to death, but as close as they could. She immediately put these people on her "people that I will admire for the rest of my life" list. Hey Ino, your ramen is going to get cold, and trust me. Cold ramen is not something you even want to attempt to eat. Naruto spoke, thankfully without a full mouth. Ino turned her attention back to the ramen. True, she wanted to keep her perfect figure, and yes, she had purchased the healthiest bowl of ramen that the old man had on the menu, but as she stared down at the bowl of noodles, her past words began to come back to her. Maybe I just haven't given it a fair chance before. While she had tried it once after the whole Genu situation, she was becoming rather curious as to how many times that mission was coming back to her. She didn't really pay it any mind then. Now, thanks to Naruto, she was getting ready to take her first true dive into the world of Ichiraku ramen. She picked up her set of chopsticks, broke them apart into 2 perfect pieces, to which Naruto loudly congratulated her on, as he could never get them to break in 2 as cleanly as she could. Gave a silent "Ikadakimasu" and took her first bite out of the bowl of boiled noodles. Then she took another bite, slightly faster than her first one. And before long, she was cheerfully chewing into her bowl of miso ramen. Wow, this is really good. I can't believe I haven't been here more. Naruto smiled widely and finished slurping up the last of the juice. I don't care what anyone says. There is nothing better than Ichiraku ramen. Oi, Ayame ne-chan. I hope you are learning everything you can from Asen. Ayame giggled softly at his comment while Tucci feigned being offended at it. Naruto, come on. You're talking like I could die within the next few months. I'll have you know that I still have at least 15 years left in me according to my doctor. The only reason you know that is because I made you go. Ayame spoke from behind her father like she was his mother. I swear, if I weren't here, you wouldn't keep up with your health at all. Ino decided to interject herself in this conversation. I kinda know how you feel. If it weren't for me, Naruto would probably be eating ramen 24 hours a day. Though, I suppose it wouldn't be so bad if it helps your business out. Ayame looked at her and smiled. She leaned in close and whispered to her. Well, between me and you, whenever my dad isn't around, I do try to encourage Naruto to at least try to eat at other places and try other things, but he never does. Ino glanced over in Naruto's direction to make sure that he wasn't paying attention, then over to Tucci. When she was sure that it was all clear, she began to whisper. Well, I don't think that it's because he doesn't want to. It's more like because he can't. I was with him one time when I tried to make him eat somewhere else, and he was kicked out before we could even get through the door. I don't know why, but most of the people of this village really hate him." Ino didn't miss the way that Ayame's face literally plummeted during her explanation. "I see." She sighed and turned to Naruto, who was happily digging into his next bowl. "Well, while I can't say much, I will say that the reason for all of this hatred is completely baseless, and therefore utterly incomprehensible. Unfortunately, the only one who can tell you this reason is sitting right next to you." Ino looked over at her partner, thankful for this new piece of info. "I was right. There is something deeper. And if he is the only one who can tell me about it, then I guess I'm gonna be in the dark for a while then. But I wouldn't worry myself over this too much if I were you." Ino turned her attention back to Ayame, and was somewhat surprised to see a smile on her face. "One thing that I know about Naruto is that if he has something he wants to say, he isn't shy about saying it. He will tell you when he is ready to." Ino really thought about what the woman told her right then. A small smile began to creep its way across her face. She immediately thought back to their first Chunin exam, when all of the genin were assembled in the classroom. She may have thought it childish of him to simply yell out that he was going to beat each and every person in that room, but looking back on it, he was simply telling everyone what he thought. He simply wasn't being shy about saying what he thought. She nodded her head, returning the smile. "Oi, what are you two whispering about over there?" Naruto, fresh off of his latest bowl of ramen, had turned his attention to the two female members of their collected party. "Oh, nothing much. Just girl stuff." Ino sent her smile towards Naruto, who looked on in mild confusion. "He looks cute when he's confused. Hey Naruto, why don't you go to the festival this year? It might actually do you more good, especially if you go with Yamanaka-san here," Tucci said while collecting Naruto and Ino's bowls. The sudden, and brief, drop in the expression on Naruto's face was not lost on those present, and each of them already knew that although some of his worst memories of his childhood were from this particular day, he was actually considering the idea of actually going with someone who didn't think ill of him. Sakura wasn't an option, since she seemed to not outright hate him, but definitely didn't want any sort of deep connection with him. Hinata would have been a good choice, if the girl would have just worked up the courage to ask him. Deep down, Ino had some misgivings about going to the festival with him. If the last time that she had been seen going with him somewhere that he wasn't accepted in was any indication, then she would be in for a rough time if she did decide to go with him to the festival. And yet, just one look at her partner's face and she knew that she wouldn't be able to do anything else. "What did ya say, Naruto? Wanna hit up the festival for a while?" Naruto was lost in thought for a while, probably weighing the pros and cons of going to the festival in the first place, let alone with someone else. Even if that someone else was just his partner. And after a few minutes of this he finally spoke up. "I guess it wouldn't be all bad. Okay, let's go." Ino shot up from her seat, and keeping with her promise was about to pay for the meal, but Tucci and Ayame smiled and declined, saying that this was their usual birthday gift to their favorite customer, and that as one of his closest friends, hers was also on the house. After giving a heartfelt thanks and bowing deeply, which Naruto mimicked, she grabbed his arm and they were off. Festival. The 20th annual Konoha Festival, celebrating 20 years since the brave and selfless sacrifice of a man who was considered by many to be the greatest Hokage ever. Celebrating 20 years since the defeat of the most powerful of the tailed beast, the Kyuubi no Kitsune. This was the one day that just about everyone in the village could forget about all of their problems and either celebrate the defeat of a monster, or mourn the loss of a great leader or loved ones. And though he would never admit it, though he would never show it, deep down Uzumaki Naruto hated this day with all of his heart. This was the one day that the threats would actually seem like they would be carried through, the one day that his life was in the most danger. Never mind the fact that it was supposed to be his birthday, a day that he wished that he could at least celebrate in private. But no, it would not come to pass, as every year growing up, more and more people showed up outside his apartment with death threats and weapons and intent to kill. This was one of the reasons why he joined the Anbu. When he found out that they were secretly protecting him from most all of the things that either threatened to kill or seriously injure him, even if some were rather reluctant, he was eternally grateful to them. However, this particular festival day was different. And it didn't take too much imagination to figure out why. Out the corner of his eye, he caught sight of the other blonde-haired, blue-eyed Anbu member running up to him, carrying something that looked like a baby Anbu. When she confirmed his guess and told him about her own run-in with the creature, he had to stifle a laugh. Not because of the fact that it happened to her, but because he knew the reason why it happened, though he would rot in his grave before he told her that story. In all honesty, he wanted to be the one to get the little stuffed toy for her, but the stall owner, predictably, told them that he would not allow him to play at his stall. Not wanting to worry Ino too much, he came back with the first line that popped into his mind. "That's okay. This game looks too easy anyway. I'll bet that Ino could probably beat this game with her eyes closed." The fact that she actually did surprised the hell out of him. But all of the games, all of the food, even the completely half-assed play of the Yondaime defeating the Kyuubi, none of it really mattered to Naruto at that time. The fact of the matter was he was having a very good time. He would have to make sure that before this day was over to thank Ino for even thinking about wasting her day on him. "Hey Naruto, can I ask you something?" Ino broke through his thoughts so suddenly, that he was actually surprised that she spoke. "Oh, sure, go ahead." "Well, it's just, do you remember the first Chunin exam that we took?" "Yeah, of course I do. During the preliminaries, I remember Sakura staring at Sasuke very intently. While I didn't think much of it at first, when I actually looked at her, it was almost like she was scared of him or something. Then after the fight, even though there didn't seem to be anything wrong with him, he was still taken away by the medics. I know it's about 8 years too late to be asking something like this, but I couldn't talk to Sakura about it since she would get all depressed that Sasuke-kun was gone. And I am not even gonna think about asking your sensei that question. So that makes you my only candidate." Naruto listened on while Ino explained her reasons for her curiosity. He had a brief inner debate with himself about whether or not he should really divulge this information. "Brief. You know about the whole Orochimaru thing, right? Well, apparently he has this forbidden jutsu that allows him to basically live forever. The only catch is that he needed to change bodies every 3 years. So what he did was he found ninjas that had the potential to become very strong candidates for him and put his cursed seal on them. The seal itself takes a lot of energy to use, but it gives the user a hell of a lot of strength. That is what he did to Sasuke during the second round of the exams. Though, things didn't go as planned for him, as Sasuke killed him as soon as he got everything he needed from Orochimaru." Ino listened on, extremely interested in what he had to say about her former crush. Kinda like a praying mantis. So during the prelims, they took him away just so they could make sure that the cursed seal wouldn't take control of him. Kinda funny, isn't it? After everything we did to try and help the bastard, he turns around and dumps us like a sack of potatoes. But what about now? From what I've heard, seals like those can't be removed unless it's by the one who put it on. Does that mean it's still on him? Unfortunately, yes it is. However, Konoha took some special precautions. They placed another seal over that one. At the very most, it should keep it from taking over him until he dies, or until we can produce someone powerful enough to completely remove it, though I would put my money on the former happening first. Ino nodded her head at this and turned her head forward. "Wow, you guys must have had it rough. And the screwed up part about it was that our so-called sensei did practically nothing to stop it. I have seen how the other Jonin senseis did with their teams. Kurenai's sensei did everything that she could think of to make her genin a team. Asuma sensei, gods rest his soul, didn't need to do much since you, Shikamaru, and Choji were practically born to work together. Even Guy helped Lee, Neji, and Tenten to work together. Kakashi sensei spouted out this bullshit about how people who break the rules are trash, but people who turn their backs on their friends are bigger trash, then just sat back and watched as we basically killed ourselves from the inside out. Some T-player he is, huh?" Ino patted his shoulder, hoping to calm him down before he got too riled up. The last thing he needed was to make a scene in a place that he already isn't appreciated in. Now, calm down a little. He is a Jonin after all. I'm sure that if there was anything he could have done, he would have done it. What is he doing now anyway? She did catch that little sentiment that Naruto sent to her long since past sensei, and was truly grateful for it. I hear they are trying to cycle another genin team through him, though last I heard Sakura, and Sasuke are still the only genins that have passed his test. He says he'll give it another 5 tries before he decides to go back to being an Anbu again. That would be a big help. I heard that he was one of the best the Anbu have seen in a while. Hope everything turns out okay for him. Ino decided to try and find a more comforting topic for discussion. In another part of a festival, a certain silver-haired Jonin finished the last of a series of sneezes that had plagued him for the last few minutes. Naruto looked up at the sky, and saw that the sun was getting ready to settle beyond the horizon. We still got some time before the fireworks begin. Is there anything else you wanted to do? Oi, Dobi. Naruto cringed slightly at his old nickname. There was only one person that called him that. Sure enough, walking up behind them was the raven-haired genius of his class, Uchiha Sasuke. One hand was in his pocket, the other hanging out as it was accompanied by the arm of the pink-haired medic Nin Haruno Sakura. Sasuke, Sakura-chan, how are you guys doing? Just fine, Naruto, but what about you? I never see you at the festival. And I know that you never come because I actually look for you. Sakura spoke to Naruto, not noticing Ino at present. Naturally, that didn't exactly sit well with Ino. Oh, hey forehead, nice to see you, too. Sakura turned to her former friend, and was about to come back with some sort of witty comment, then took in the entire scene. Wait. You are actually here with him? Yeah, what's the problem with that? Partners can't be seen hanging out together? This was indeed true. She had come here with Naruto as his partner and nothing more. Sakura, however, either wasn't buying it, or wanted Ino to believe that she wasn't. Sure, you are here at the festival, alone, holding a stuffed teddy bear that he obviously won for you, and you are here as just partners. Must suck down there in Loserville, doesn't it? I mean, after all, you lost Sasuke-kun to me, didn't you? Ino couldn't believe what her former friend was telling her. Lost Sasuke to you? Are you kidding me? If anything, I won, simply because I refused to continue to follow after a lost cause. Meantime, you were following after Sasuke like you did all those years at the academy, while you continued to ignore the one person who actually cared about your sorry butt. Naruto? Please, all he had for me was a little kitty crush. That is all it ever was, and that is all it ever will be. Obviously, she had completely forgotten that her former teammate was standing 3 feet to her right. Ino hadn't. You really are insensitive, you know that? I hope Sasuke dumps you like a sack of beans when he's done resurrecting his clan. Ino didn't really care that Sasuke was standing 3 feet to her right. She just grabbed a stunned Naruto's arm, and pulled him towards the seating area for the fireworks show, leaving a pissed-off Sasuke and a shocked Sakura behind. In the seats, Naruto had gone completely numb. He didn't feel a thing. Didn't feel when Ino dragged him towards the seats. Didn't feel when Ino gently placed him in one of the seats. Didn't even feel her try to shake him out of his daze. Sakura's words continued to replay itself in his mind. Naruto? Please, all he had for me was a little kitty crush. That is all it ever was, and that is all it ever will be. It played a few dozen times in his mind before her finally started tuning everything back in. Naruto, I'm sorry that you had to be there for that. I never should have started that fight. I didn't think she would be that much of a jerk towards you. Ino started to get worried when she saw the slight smile creep its way across his face, and then got downright scared when he started giggling like a madman. Naruto? Thank you, Ino-chan. Now I can finally accept the fact that Sakura was never within my reach. I never had a chance with her. My so-called little kitty crush was nothing compared to the devotion that she feels toward helping that last Uchiha revive his clan. I guess I just needed something to just hit me right between the eyes and say, guess what, Dobi? It's time to wake up and smell the ramen. You will never, ever have any type of shot at getting with her. So thank you, Ino-chan, for providing me with that wake-up call. The smile that was present on his face spoke volumes for Ino, and she could do nothing more than smile back. You are very welcome. So tell me, how would you like to celebrate this newfound discovery? Naruto turned his head down and thought for a second. Then, almost as if a light clicked on in his head, his eyes widened, then narrowed as an evil grin crept across his face. If you're up for it, I've got a killer idea. Ino nodded her head eagerly, and leaned in while Naruto whispered the blueprints for his first prank in over 8 years into her ear. You really think it will work? You do your part, I'll do mine. As long as neither of us messes up, this should go off without a hitch. Okay, then I'll stop by my house really quick and I should be back in time for the show to begin. No, Ino-chan, the real show begins when this one ends. Festival, end of fireworks show. Sakura, still latched onto Sasuke's arm, as if she had been born that way, led her husband-to-be towards the exit of the festival. It had indeed been a great night for the both of them, though Sasuke would never admit to it in a vain attempt to keep up his cool, calm, and composed personality. "So, Sasuke-kun, what do you say to getting in with the clan resurrection mission when we get home?" Before said Uchiha could come up with a suitable response, or anyone for that matter, a female ninja in an Anbu uniform appeared in front of them. "Uchiha Sasuke, Hokage-sama requests your presence at the Hokage Tower immediately." Sakura immediately spoke up in defense of her fiancé. "Hokage-sama can wait until the morning. It is still our day off, after all. It has to do with your cursed seal, Uchiha Sasuke." This, of course, got the attention of both Jonins. "Fine, then let's go." Sakura spoke in an annoyed tone of voice. "Hokage-sama has requested to see Uchiha Sasuke alone. I am the Hokage's apprentice, so I am sure that she won't mind me going with him." "Pardon me, miss, but I do believe that Uchiha Sasuke is perfectly capable of speaking for himself, if you would allow him to." "Sasuke-san, I have orders from the Hokage herself to bring you to the tower alone. So either you go alone on your own, or I go back and tell her that you wouldn't come, and she does it her way. And for your sake, I would suggest the former." Sakura was about to speak up, but Sasuke cut her off. "Go home and warm the bed for me." Sakura immediately softened up. "Okay, but hurry, Sasuke-kun." She gave him a quick kiss on the cheek before walking off in the direction of their house. "What is that word that one guy likes to use? Oh, right, troublesome." He turned back to the Anbu. "Okay, I'm ready. Hokage-sama will be waiting for you." And with that, the Anbu disappeared. Hokage Tower. Sasuke walked up to the tower 10 minutes after the Anbu left him. He walked straight up the stairs into the Hokage's office, and was somewhat surprised that she was waiting for him outside the office. "You called for me, Hokage-sama?" "Yay, that's right. I had some questions about the seal." "Well, I'm here now, so ask away. Have you felt any sort of discomfort in the area of the seal lately?" "No. Anything that feels even remotely like what it used to when it took over your body?" "No. Do you feel any chakra flowing out of it or merging with your own chakra?" "No. I see. What is the point of all this?" Sasuke was getting visibly annoyed. As you know, seals tend to weaken over time. That, coupled with the vast majority of cursed chakra that the cursed seal exudes, could lead to the seal breaking far earlier than it should. So the elders decided to do semi-yearly checks on your seal to make sure that it isn't deteriorating. "And why did I need to come alone?" "Best not to worry Sakura in case anything is wrong." "Well, I'm still me, so can I go now?" Tsunade sighed. "Sheesh, you're just as bad as Naruto. Difference is I can't knock you out, cuz then the elders will get on my case." "But yes, you can go home now." That was all I needed. Sasuke turned and left without a word. As he walked through the streets of Konoha, he saw a red blur pass over him. He wasn't completely sure, as he didn't have his Sharingan activated, but he could have swore that the blur had pink hair. Meanwhile, back at Sakura and Sasuke's house. The moment Sakura entered their house, she was in the bedroom, stripping off all of her clothes, digging out the skimpiest set of lingerie that she could find, which surprise was red, and wrapping herself in the shortest, thinnest red robe she had, which went down to her mid-thighs. She then sat on the bed and waited. 10 minutes later, her front door opened, and in stepped her Uchiha god. He walked straight to the bedroom. "Hey." Sakura stood straight up and wrapped her arms around him. "Hey, what did Hokage-sama want to speak to you about?" "Nothing much. Just thought that my seal might be breaking down faster than normal. But don't worry, I'm perfectly fine." Sakura believed him, but decided to play the worried fiancé. "You sure?" "Yay, I'm sure. Now what about accomplishing that mission?" Sakura saw no more need for words, and before they knew it, lips were locked, tongues were dancing, and a robe was coming undone. However, before anything really serious could happen, Sasuke broke the kiss, grabbed his head and started groaning out loud. "Sasuke-kun, what's wrong?" Sakura asked worriedly as Sasuke sunk down on the floor. "TDSS seal, GE get, Hawk, Hoka, GE." Sakura wasted no time, tying off her robe while she was running to the door, then bounding out into the night. She reached the tower and didn't bother going through the door, opting to go straight for her office window. "Please, let her be here." Sure enough, face down in another pile of paperwork with 2 bottles of sake on either side of her, was the Godem Hokage. Not wanting to favor subtlety, Sakura smashed her way through the window and yelled, "Tsunade-sama." Tsunade awoke lazily. Damn it Shizune, it isn't even morning yet. Nag me when I actually have to look like I'm doing work. Tsunade-sama, Sasuke-kun's seal. I think it's breaking. Alert at once, Tsunade stood up and boomed at her apprentice, take me to him, now. They raced to the house, went into the door, and saw Sasuke, changing into his night clothes. Sakura was dumbfounded. Sasuke-kun, are you alright? He looked over to her. Of course, why wouldn't I be? Sakura, you told me that his seal might be breaking. Would you like to clarify? Sakura did not like the tone of voice that the Hokage was using. But it was true. I was right here. And he was on the ground clutching his head saying that there was something wrong with his seal. Sasuke looked at her, slightly annoyed. No, I didn't even get back until a few minutes ago. Now Sakura was really confused. But I just saw you 5 or 6 minutes ago. You just got back from your meeting with Tsunade-sama. Sakura, you must be on something, because you are the only person I have seen tonight. That can't be true. He just went to go see you because you had some questions about his seal. Right Sasuke-kun? Sasuke's annoyed look grew. What are you talking about? Tsunade-sama didn't want to speak to me. Are you sure you are okay? Sakura's jaw dropped. Haruno Sakura, I want you in my office tomorrow morning. We need to go over some extra training. And with that the Hokage walked out the house, the promise of pain for Sakura written all over her face. Sasuke Simple dropped himself into bed and went to sleep, leaving a dumbstruck Sakura to try to figure out just what had happened that night. And what was in store for her tomorrow. Streets of Konoha. Though they kept it silent so that no one would hear, the two blonde-haired, blue-eyed Enbu couldn't contain the laughter that had been building up inside of them. I can't believe how well that worked out. I sure have missed doing things like this. The male of the duo said in a voice that was just begging to be completely unleashed. I know. That was absolutely brilliant. A true masterpiece of pranks. Ino was struggling just as much. But if you were just going to have me henge into Tsunade-sama, why couldn't I have just hanged into my Anbu uniform? Because I wasn't sure if that bastard was going to use his Sharingan to see if it was legit. Once I saw that he didn't, the rest was cake. Though now I have a new reason for being glad that I didn't end up with Sakura. She is one terrible kisser. Dare I say, even Sasuke kissed better than her. Ino could take it anymore. She let out a loud laugh that echoed throughout the village. But did you see her face when no one believed her story? I wish I had my camera for that one. Oh yeah, how did you make it so that Sasu Shintenshin no Jutsu jumped into his mind and took control? Box seats are fun and all, but there's nothing like being front row center to the greatest show alive. And I was even able to alter his memory a little bit. As far as he knows, there was no Tsunade and no Anbu. He just went to the shop to get some eggs. Why didn't you just do that from the beginning? Then you wouldn't have had to use Shintenshin no Jutsu. Had to be in their brain to modify it. I see. Still, very clever. We should team up again sometime. Ino simply smiled. As they reached the door to her apartment building, Naruto spoke up again. Seriously though, let's do this again sometime. Sure, I'm always up for another good prank. Naruto shook his head. As fun as that sounds, that's not what I meant. I mean you and me, let's just hang out again. You know, have some fun together. Fun that doesn't have to do with pranking. Ino looked at him for a second. Yeah, I would like that. He smiled. Well, I guess this is your stop, huh? Yeah, it is. She opened her door. Tomorrow? Yeah, back to missions as always. But if we have some free time, I'll be sure to look you up. Ino smiled and nodded her head. She turned to walk into the building, then turned back and kissed his cheek. Night, she blurted out before rushing back in and closing the door. Naruto touched his cheek and smiled. Night, Ino-chan. Home of residence. Owns several estates throughout the 5 countries, but mainly lives in his 10-bedroom home in Wind Country. Tokugara Ganju was a small-time crook in his early years, constantly in and out of the custody of the local authorities when his parents had decided that he wouldn't learn anything unless it was the hard way. His parents had to try and keep him out of sight, as they were one of the richest families in the world. His father, Tokugara Kenji, inherited his grandfather's gift for inventing new and useful tools and had established himself as one of the leading inventors within the entire world. His mother, Tokugara Reina, was one of the most popular and successful actresses not only within the ninja community, but worldwide as well, second only to Fujikaze Yukie in sheer talent and beauty. When he was 16, Ganju had already developed a rap sheet that could rival half of the missing nins in Fire Country alone, except instead of killing, he kept himself at stealing, though he did increase the scale at which his thefts occurred, eventually pulling a full-scale bank job for his 16th birthday. His parents had finally had enough and decided to cut him from the family name, thereby disowning him and preventing him from gaining their inheritance. Unfortunately, Ganju found out about his parents' plot and naturally became enraged. He used the money that he had stolen to buy out the services of a missing nin, the now deceased missing nin Momochi Zabuza, and ordered him to kill his parents and leave absolutely no witnesses. Zabuza carried out his contract expertly, eliminating Kenji and Reina before either could make Ganju's banishment from their family official. Any and all close advisors were also killed in the slaughter. Ganju feigned his sadness at their funeral, and in a speech that could have made anyone there vote for him to become Kage of any of the villages, promised to carry on his father's and his grandfather's legacies, making their corporation the biggest and best that the world had ever seen. And to an extent, he held true to his promise. Over the course of a few years, the company's income had increased by at least 150. He used the increase to expand the business to other countries, eventually becoming a global phenomenon. The resources that were at his disposal were near limitless, and many began to wonder if he would ever go away. However, none of them knew the true reason behind his newfound wealth. True, on the surface he kept his ancestors' business running like usual. Underneath all of that, however, was a series of underground developmental facilities that used the resources that he received to develop weapons. Handguns, shotguns, machine guns, you name it, he made it. By the time he was 20, he had built his first factory and began mass-producing them, selling them on the black market. Even though it was underground, people still were able to find out about this, and threatened to turn him into the authorities. Unfortunately for them, Ganju had an addiction. His drug, missing nins. After Zabuza, he began hiring missing nins for most any job that required blood work, and eventually, he was able to acquire 4 of them permanently. One from the hidden sand village, one from the waterfall, one from the mist, and his most recent one from the rock. All are ranked as a class missing nins. We have taken special interest in this case because he has murdered a great supporter of mine. We would have ended up going after him sooner or later, so it would be wise to take him out sooner. You will take whoever you need and eliminate Tokugawa Ganju and the 4 missing nins that are in his charge. There is no time restraint for this mission, so feel free to use whatever means that you deem necessary. Good luck. Tsunade, Godem Hokage. End of mission order. Yamanaka Ino stared down at the mission profile that had been delivered to her earlier that day again. At first, she had thought she knew what to expect out of this mission. Some fat tyrant with money to throw around at some missing nins needed to be taken out. And while she's somewhat right about this mission, the fact that there were 4 A-class missing nins there made the mission that much more interesting. Maybe I'll actually get some field practice on the jutsu I just perfected. Well, better go find him. If he is as bored as he said he has been, this should be the wake-up call that he has been waiting for. It took her no less than 5 minutes to locate Uzumaki Naruto, as opposed to the half an hour that it usually took. She was surprised at just how easy it was to find him when she started thinking about it. Though the fact that there were only a handful of places that he would be didn't hurt. During the night hours, he was in his apartment. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner were spent at his favorite ramen stand. When he was bored, he could be found at the training grounds, though that was never the same place one day as it was the next. If he was depressed, or if he simply wished to enjoy the view, he was at the Hokage monument. Just a few of the places that he frequented. This time, she found him up at the monument with a few ramen cups. The surefire future Hokage barely even noticed that he was no longer alone on the monument, and only turned when Ino was standing right next to him. He swallowed the noodles that he had in his mouth and looked up at his blonde partner. "Hey, Ino, you got a mission?" He nodded towards her, acknowledging the fact that she was in her Anbu outfit, with her mask in her hand. "We have a mission." She tossed him the scroll. "Read that on the way to your apartment, burn it when you're done, and change over. Don't worry, this one actually promises to be fun. This time we get to kill missing nins. A class. 4 of them." Naruto perked up when he heard her declare that they had actually bad guys to kill. Sweet. Things were starting to get kinda boring around here. At first I thought Ba-chan was simply not giving us any of the really good missions. I was getting scared that she might have found out about our little prank. Ino simply nodded. In the back of her mind, she also had her fears about the freakishly powerful Hokage possibly finding out about the prank that they had played on Sakura at her expense. The woman was far more perceptive than her gambling and drinking made people think. However, within the week after they had performed the prank, the worst that they had seen Tsunade do to anyone during that time was the complete and total torture of her apprentice, Sakura. Ino had never seen the girl look more a mess than during her week in the field with the Hokage. However, she felt that it was Sakura's own fault. If she would have noticed just how good of an opportunity she was passing up for Sasuke, the whole prank would have never happened. Ino had used their week of inactivity to get closer to her partner, learning as much about him as she could. And she was surprised by most of the things that he allowed himself to tell her. The first thing that caught her off guard was his detailed explanation of what happened after everyone was put to sleep during the Chunin exams, and while she was surprised to find out about Naruto's exploits against Gaara, going particularly wide-eyed when he spoke about how he summoned Gamabunta, she did ask if he would have been so motivated if he had known that Sakura never would have wanted to be with him. His answer shocked the hell out of her. Yeah, of course I would have. She was still my friend, and she was still a ninja of Konoha. If I am to become Hokage, I will have to protect people who don't like me anyway, right? Might as well get as much practice now. Typical Naruto. Next was his adventure with Jiraiya, and his quest to bring Tsunade back to Konoha to become Hokage. The fact that he learned the Rasengan, the attack that the Yondaime himself created, was just an extra added bonus. She was a little pissed when she found out that Yakushi Kabuto, the only other person that she had ever seen that wore as much purple as she did, was working with Orochimaru from the get-go. Naruto, not willing to spend time with a pissed-off Ino, showed her the crystal that Tsunade gave him. She became particularly teary-eyed when he explained the history behind that crystal. She hugged Naruto tightly after he had finished and said, "You have survived more than any one person should. You will become Hokage." Her final surprise of that week came when she found out about Naruto's friendship with the Sand Ninja, Sabaku no Gaara, who she had recently found out was Case Cage. These two had nearly killed each other during the Chunin exam, and although Sand and Leaf were back on good terms after the invasion attempt, she figured that two people who fought so fiercely couldn't just forget like that. His explanation only left her even more confused. Though we may not seem like it, we are really more alike than you think. When he wouldn't say anymore, she gave up and accepted. Throughout all of his explanations, there was one thing that she noticed about this Naruto that differed from the old Naruto. When he spoke about all of these great things that he had done, he didn't sound like he was bragging at all. On the contrary, he actually sounded like all of these things were everyday happenings for him. She wasn't sure if he was naturally humble, or just didn't think that it was all that big of a deal anymore, but it impressed her to no end. But her time with him had been cut short when Coyote came with the mission orders from Tsunade. Naruto turned into another person when he put on his Anbu mask, as if he didn't have enough masks as it was. During their missions together, he rarely talked, only speaking when it was absolutely necessary. It was kinda unnerving to see the usually exuberant Naruto so quiet and solemn. Not that she was complaining or anything. After all, silence was what made the Anbu so effective in missions. The only time that the enemy knew that they were there was when it was too late. It was just that, at least once just for kicks, she would like to see him jump on a rock and yell out, "I am Uzumaki Naruto, Konoha Anbu member, and I am gonna kick all of your asses." And then proceed to do just that. She had been so lost in her thoughts that she hadn't even noticed that Naruto was no longer with her on the monument. In fact, by the time she had noticed that he had left, he had already returned fully clad in his Anbu uniform. "Hey, aren't we bringing Kiba with us? I'm sure that he must be just as bored as we are with all of the training that he is going through. I already tried to get him, but he and his sister are out on a joint mission with the hidden waterfall village. Oh well, it's his loss I guess. Well, let's get going." He took off for the front gate of the village. Ino gave a light laugh. Still a kid at heart. She started running after him. They reached the entrance at the same time, put their masks on, and in a flash, the Anbu team disappeared. -2 days later, Naruto looked up at the mansion impressed. The mission order said that the guy was a rich bastard, but you couldn't truly appreciate just how rich someone was until you took a good look at how big the house that he lived in was. Then you just had to wrap your head around the fact that he owned more than one of these things. Outside of that, it also made his job that much easier. Big houses like these usually meant that the person inside needed extra security to ensure that he remained safe. Naruto believed that he bypassed this step, under the impression that 4 A-class missing nins could keep him safer than any number of security guards could. But Ino wasn't willing to take that chance, jumping into the body of a bird and scoping out the mansion. He turned back to the limp figure of Ino, extremely glad that he was partnered with such a resourceful ninja. Wonder how things would have been had we been on the same team as Genins. That train of thought ended at that when Ino came back to life, and after spending a few seconds to get her bearings, turned to her partner. I hate to admit it, but you were right. The only bits of security for the entire mansion are the ninjas that he has on his payroll. He has 2 of them patrolling the outside of the mansion, and I would be willing to bet that the other 2 are with him. Naruto turned his gaze back to the mansion. Good, that means we only have to seriously fight 2 of them. Where are they now? One of them is patrolling the perimeter of the house, the other is on the roof. You take the one on the ground. I'll meet you back here in 5 minutes. Naruto was gone almost before the last word escaped his mouth. Ino was used to it by now. When Naruto said 5 minutes, he meant 5 minutes. So questioning whether he was actually going to be there in 5 minutes wasn't even an option. She moved through the trees and eventually found her target, the missing nin. Okay, Shika, let's see if I was able to get this one right. She took off her kunai holster and faced her target. She went through a series of seals and ended with her hands in a special seal that she had developed, her hands shaped like a diamond with the tips of her fingers touching at the top and her thumbs at the bottom. She looked through the hole that her hands made and centered him within it. Here goes nothing. She activated the jutsu, and seconds later, the missing nin stopped walking. Ino cringed just a little, thinking that just maybe it didn't work and he sensed her chakra signature. However, when she took a step backwards to turn and run, she saw that he also took a step backwards. Surprised, she raised her hand, and the ninja copied her movements perfectly. Ino could stop the smile that came across her face if she tried. Yes, it worked. The mind imitation jutsu is a success. She had been waiting to test this jutsu out for a while now, and couldn't wait to tell her former teammate that all of their hard work had finally paid off. It started out as a simple statement from Shikamaru. Hey, Ino, if you really want to get better than Sakura, maybe you should come up with a jutsu that can beat her. After all, we saw how well that troublesome Shintenshin no Jutsu did against her. Ino's first impulse was to bash him over his pineapple-shaped head, but then she started thinking about what he just told her. Maybe I do need a new jutsu, something all my own. In the weeks after that revelation, she began thinking about what kind of jutsu she should make. Bah, this is too hard. How am I supposed to come up with a new jutsu out of thin air? Most of the ones I have thought of have already been made. Needless to say, it was a frustrating time for Ino. Then, when she had heard about Naruto's Udama Rasengan, she was struck with inspiration. I don't have to come up with a completely new jutsu. I just need to expand a jutsu I already know. No sooner had that thought entered her mind, she already knew which jutsu to use. The Shintenshin no Jutsu, while incredibly useful as a reconnaissance jutsu, had no place in a combat environment. If she was to start anywhere, it would be there. But just how could she expand upon it? Her answer came in the form of her teammate, Shikamaru. Using his favorite jutsu as the base, she got to work on her newest jutsu. The end result? Mind imitation jutsu. Instead of sending her entire mind of her opponent, she only sent some of it. Just enough to allow her to control her opponent's movements. Ups, she didn't feel their pain, and she didn't die if their body died. Downs, she couldn't see into her opponent's mind. Using her newest jutsu's most useful up, she moved her hand down to where her kunai pouch used to be, and he began to rummage through the kunai pouch that was still on his leg. She then made him pull the kunai out and thrust it cleanly between his eyes. Since her jutsu could only control living minds, the jutsu was broken immediately, and he fell like a rag doll to the ground. After making sure that the body wouldn't be found anytime soon, she made her way back to the meeting place, her mask hiding the ear-to-ear smile that was on her face. Roof of the mansion. The hidden rock missing nin finished his latest patrol of the roof of the mansion, something that he thought was completely worthless to begin with. True, he had only been a part of this little entourage for the better part of a week now, But that didn't mean he wasn't entitled to his own opinions about the way this place was run. Unfortunately, it did mean that whatever opinions that he did have meant absolutely nothing to anyone else. He tried not to mind though. He was living the good life of a ninja, with maids waiting at his every beck and call, and a fat paycheck every week. What more could a guy ask for? His answer came in the form of a seductive coup from behind him. His first instance was to pull out a few senbon needles and give whoever it was a little lesson in acupuncture. However, the sight that reached his eyes immediately left him speechless. Laying in an overly seductive pose, running her fingers all across her bare skin, was a young, almost naked woman, with bright blue eyes and golden blonde hair, done into a pair of pigtails. She looked over to him and spoke in a very sultry voice. "Hey there, big boy. Why don't you take a break and play with me for a while?" As good as the maids were, the fact that there was a strict hands-off rule applied to them made this invitation all the more pleasing. He made his way over to her, and although he was slightly confused when he saw that there were a set of whisker marks on her face, the rest of her body quickly purged any curiosity about them. "Hey, baby, wanna see my kunai?" It would be the last thing he would ever say. The last thing he would ever see would be the girl poofing out of existence. The last thing he would ever hear would be, "Nah, I like mine better," from behind him. Then, there was nothing else. He fell forward, a kunai embedded deep into the back of his head. His assailant caught him before he landed on the roof, and carried him to the ground. Naruto hid the body and ran back to the meeting spot, where Ino was waiting. 5 minutes. As promised, Ino shook her head and looked back into the mansion. How long before they realize that they are now down 2 missing nins? Probably not that long, just means that we probably won't be able to conceal ourselves anymore. Ino looked over at her partner and sighed. "Well, if it's gonna be a fight, we might as well start it, right?" Naruto nodded his head at her, smiling under his mask. "Let's go." They jumped up and went through a couple of open windows. They both were somewhat relieved when they were met with an empty kitchen, and began to slowly make their way through the house. Room after room, they stealthily moved through, at first thankful for the empty rooms. However, as they passed the 10th room, Ino silently brought up a point that had began to worry her. "Something isn't right here. As rich as this asshole is, and as big as this house is, there should be maids, butlers, and all sorts of people here. I really don't like the fact that we haven't run into one person since entering this house." Naruto had indeed noticed this as well, but didn't sound at all worried about it. "He hasn't escaped yet. I have surrounded the mansion with cage bunshin. If he did escape, one of them would have noticed by now." Ino nodded her head. Naruto had already told her about his favorite technique's special ability, which allowed him to see the memories of his bunshin after it was dispelled. One of the first things that they did after becoming a team was tell each other about their current abilities. If they didn't know just what the other person could do, then how could they work as a team? The fact that Naruto was the one who proposed the idea was something that completely blew her mind. Her thoughts were interrupted by a pair of senbon needles planting themselves into the wall beside her. Turning to the direction that they came from, she was greeted with the face of the missing waterfall nin. "Hello there. I don't suppose you are another one of those protesters, trying to uncover the boss's secret, are you?" Naruto was the one to speak up. "No, we are here to end your boss." The waterfall nin sighed. "Now why does it have to be that way? If you kill my boss, I stop getting money. Now I have to kill the both of you." He pulled out another pair of senbon needles and threw one each at Naruto and Ino. The blonde duo easily dodged them, and Ino lunged at him with a kunai in her hand. She let loose a barrage of kunai attacks which the missing nin was barely able to dodge. During her short time as a teammate with Naruto, he had helped her improve her taijutsu dramatically. The fact that they were still inside the mansion also helped by limiting his maneuverability. Naruto, in the meantime, was standing back appearing to be waiting for an opening for himself. Finally, after a misstep by Ino which left her slightly off balance, the missing nin lunged forward and her, knocking the kunai away from her hand and sending an open-hand palm strike to her chin, sending her flying into the air. Unfortunately, he completely missed Naruto running forward, underneath Ino's still sailing form. Naruto lunged forward and hit him straight in the chest with an open-hand strike, sending him flying back into the wall. As the missing nin slowly recovered, Naruto kept his striking posed, seemingly deep in concentration. The missing nin stood up and laughed. Okay, that was a pretty good hit. But if that is all you have, then you are in some trouble. Naruto smirked underneath his mask, as he spoke the last words that the missing nin would ever hear. Rosenbaum. He relaxed his posture, and the missing nin exploded. Ino had recovered from the hit, which wasn't nearly as hard as she thought it should have been, and saw the entire scene unfold in front of her. After the entire space that they had been occupying was dotted with the blood of the former missing nin, she walked up to Naruto. What the hell did you do to him? Naruto looked at her. My new assassination technique, the Rosenbaum. It is just like a regular Rasengan, only instead of making it bigger like I did with the Udama Rasengan, I made it super small, compacting all of that chakra into a ball no bigger than a needlepoint. It takes a lot of chakra control to keep it that way, something I actually have to thank Sakura for. Then all I do is release my control of it, and the chakra forces its way out. In other words, boom. When did you come up with that? I haven't even heard of it. About a month ago, though I didn't tell you about it because I didn't perfect it until about a week ago. Ino simply nodded. True, she felt a little left out about the attack not being brought to her attention until just now, but she supposed that it wouldn't make sense to talk about an attack you haven't learned to use completely. Hey Ino, do you hear something? It sounds kinda familiar. Ino opened her ears to the sound, which did sound familiar, and sounded like it was all around them. In an instant, Ino realized that they had seconds to live. Explosive tags. Run. They headed for the nearest windows they could find and leapt out just as a huge explosion engulfed the mansion. Naruto and Ino were laid out on the ground in front of what used to be the mansion. As they slowly climbed to their feet, they were greeted with a pair of wooden figures, both with blades that were dripping with poison pointed at them. So my entire operation was about to be threatened by a couple of ninjas. Good call, Kotaro. The blonde Anbu pair looked past the figures to see the smiling face of Tokugawa Ganju and the missing sand nin, who was apparently named Kotaro, standing a few meters away from them. Kotaro appeared to be controlling the figures with his fingers, meaning that he was a puppet user, which only made sense since he was a former sand nin. It was no problem, Tokugawa-sama, though I am sorry about the mansion. I know it was your favorite. Ah, don't sweat it. I have many more of those, and I can always have another one built. Now then, show me the faces of my would-be assassins. Twitching his fingers slightly, Kotaro made his puppets take the masks off of Naruto and Ino, revealing their faces to them. Ino used this time to address her partner. Where are your bunchins? We can still surprise them. Naruto shook his head. They are gone. I felt them leave at the same time as the explosion. Ganju began laughing. I don't believe it. They are sending kids after me now. This is way too much for me. Kotaro allowed a small smile to come across his face. If you don't mind, Tokugawa-sama, I would like to end their lives now. My fingers are getting sort of twitchy now. Yes, I suppose that they have lived long enough. He turned back to them. So, any last words? Naruto scowled at him, and was about to unleash one of the most un-ninja-like insults ever, but stopped. And smiled. Yeah, just two. Oh, and what might they be? Tokugawa Ganju would regret those words, as the last two words that would enter his ears would haunt him throughout his afterlife. Sabaku Q. The last time that Uzumaki Naruto had seen the red-haired sand user was 5 years ago, when he was sent to rescue him from Deidara and Sasori of Akatsuki. Back then, Naruto wasn't sure just how badly Gaara's combat techniques were affected by the fact that Shukaku had been taken away from him. True, he did have some of his sand manipulation powers with him when they last parted ways, as he was able to use his sand to make Naruto shake hands with him, but if he was still able to fight on the scale that he used to was a different story entirely. Now, here they were, in the Cage's office, catching up on the years that they had spent in their respective villages. Naruto allowed Gaara to go first, as there weren't many of the blonde's exploits that hadn't already reached the Cage. The first thing that Gaara did when Naruto left was sleep. And boy did he sleep. According to his siblings, he slept a total of 2 weeks straight. Not that anyone blamed him. After all, if they had to go over 15 years without sleep, then they would feel like they deserved to have as much of it as they wanted. After his brief coma, he began to assess just how much his powers suffered from the removal of his prisoner. And while he expected his abilities to be nowhere near where they used to be, realizing just how far apart they were caused just a little worry in him. The first, and decidedly most painful, of his findings was the fact that his shield of sand was no more. The sand didn't automatically defend him when an attack came, no matter how slow it came. Next was the fact that without Shukaku's chakra reserves, his armor of sand, which took a lot of chakra to maintain, was utterly impossible to maintain in a combat situation. Almost all of his offensive moves suffered greatly, though his most basic move, Sabaku Q, was still considered usable by his standards. His standards being that he could still kill his opponent with it. His solution was a simple one, and Naruto wondered if his comrade had spent some time around another Konoha shinobi. His solution: hard work. He dedicated all of his time into increasing the effectiveness of his offensive moves, increasing his chakra capacity greatly, though it would never reach the heights that it used to, and increasing his evasiveness. His shield of sand and his armor of sand would not be coming back anytime soon, so Gaara had to change his fighting style dramatically. Instead of simply standing in one place the whole battle and sending his sand out to attack and kill his enemy, he learned a few basic taijutsu forms from a few of the taijutsu masters of his village. He only used his sand occasionally, just as a way to either gain the upper hand on his opponent or to finish him. Not to say that his sand powers were completely shot down. On the contrary, his offensive techniques had reached the level that they had been before the Akatsuki attack. Naruto had witnessed that firsthand when he dispatched the missing Sand Nin and Tokugawa Ganju. Considering that he had only seen the Sabaku Q used on the arm and leg of Lee during the Chunin exams and had not seen Gaara ever perform his trademark attack on a person's full body before, the sight of both Ganju and Kotaro's bodies getting crushed by the pressure that Gaara put on the sand was a sight that wasn't going to leave Naruto's head for years. Naruto was not the most observant ninja in the world. After all, it took him all of his entire ninja life to notice the blindingly obvious affection that a certain Hyuga harbored for him. However, after spending his 6-month Anbu run as her partner, Naruto was completely aware of how silent Yamanaka Ino was being right now. He wanted to believe that it was simply the fact that they were sitting in the office of the case cage, even if he reassured her over and over that they were close friends, but immediately discounted that theory since she was just as loud and belligerent as he was when she was in the presence of the Hokage. It was here that he wished that he could use one of her mind-reading jutsus so he could determine just what was going through her mind. As Gaara motioned for Naruto to begin his side of the catching up, Ino, who had basically been standing to the side watching the two get caught up with each other, was sending her expert observational skills in overdrive. And the first thing that she noticed was how open the case cage was being. The last time she had seen the red-haired case cage was 8 years ago, when the Konoha 11, minus Tenten, had been dispatched to help the Sand Ninjas retrieve Gaara's student, and even then she noticed just how silent he was. He rarely spoke to anyone other than his brother, sister, or Naruto. And even when he did speak, it was straight to the point. He never said any more or less than what was absolutely necessary. This, however, was a welcome relief from when she had first met him during the Chunin exams. It was almost as if he was out to kill anyone and everyone who even stopped to say hello to him. But now, he almost seemed friendly. Granted, he still had the same dark marks around his eyes, and still held his near emotionless gaze on whoever spoke to him. But still, it was almost a pleasant atmosphere inside of his office. It was like she was looking at a completely different person from the one that she knew. But then again, she was already used to that, having been around Naruto for so long. This, once again, brought her back to when Naruto said that he and Gaara had more in common than she knew. She was now truly forcing herself to force her way into his mind and find out for herself just why the blonde-haired prankster always seemed to shut everyone out when certain topics about him came up. But she restrained herself, believing that Naruto would indeed tell her whatever secret provoked such dark moods within him when he was ready. After Naruto was finished telling his 5-year story to Gaara, he then asked just how Gaara found his way to the mansion. I had decided to look into any and all past records of unresolved incidents within my village. One of them was an A-class missing nin named Kotaro, one of our most prominent puppet users. No one knows just why he decided to go rogue all of the sudden, but he became a top priority when he stole an ancient puppeteering scrolls. We had a second copy of the scroll hidden away, but if that scroll was put into enemy hands, then one of our village's greatest weapons was gone. Unfortunately, with the death of my father, most of the cases, along with his, had to be put on hold in favor of rebuilding the village after the failed attack on your village. Once I took over as case cage, after the whole Akatsuki incident, I began a thorough investigation of each and every case that could not be resolved before my father's death. The Kotaro case intrigued me immensely, and I placed all of our resources into finding him. Unfortunately, stealth appeared to be one of his strong points, as we were unable to locate him within the 5 countries. We started coordinating with your Hokage, figuring that 2 villages looking for a missing nin had a better chance of finding him than just one. We finally got a lead when she gave us the report on Tokugara Ganju. I decided to handle this one personally. Naruto and Ino both nodded their heads. Good thing you showed up when you did. If he was as good as you said he was, then I doubt neither me nor Ino could have moved fast enough to escape getting poisoned. The next thing that Gaara did actually caused a sharp shiver to run down Ino's spine. He smiled. It wasn't the big, toothy, ear-to-ear smile that Naruto was famous for, and it wasn't the evil, sadistic smile that she saw on Gaara during the preliminary fights. No, it was just a slightly amused, microscopic raise of the corner of his mouth. Truth be told, I could have intervened before the house exploded, but when I found out that you 2 were inside, I wanted to see if you could have finished it on your own. After what I saw, however, I am beginning to think that you 2 need more help than you think. Ino's jaw was almost touching the floor. The Godem case cage had just told a joke. Her brain had just become completely fried, and she was incapable of coherent thought, much less words. Thankfully, and surprisingly to Ino, Naruto wasn't having as many problems as she was. Ah, come on Gaara. You had to give us some credit. They had to blow up a mansion just to keep us down long enough to trap us. Gaara didn't let the grin leave his face. Maybe I should tell your Hokage that you really can't handle the missions that are given to you by yourselves. I'm sure that she will be more than happy to lighten your load. Naruto started laughing out loud, clearly not worried about his friend's threats. That's a good one Gaara. You are a funny guy. However, when he finally did look up at the case cage, the look on his face pretty much said, I dare you to think that I won't. Now Naruto got worried. Hey, Gaara, you aren't serious about that are you? I could have a messenger hawk sent out within 10 minutes. Now Ino was getting worried. Please, case cage-sama, it is boring enough when we have to do simple missions. The really hard stuff is our only real source of excitement. Please don't tell her. Now, the other corner of his mouth had risen up. Dear Hokage, the Anbu team of Yamanaka Ino and Uzumaki Naruto, after a first-hand investigation of their skills, do not seem fit to be able to handle some of the more demanding assassination missions that you request of them. Now Naruto was biting his fingernails, sweat dripping from every pore in his body. Come on Gaara, quit playing around. You know we can handle them. Gaara pretended to not hear them. Therefore, it is my suggestion that you lower their mission rank to. Before he could finish the sentence, he froze. He was surprised to find that he couldn't move his arms, legs, head, even his eyes. I felt this before, when that Nara kid caught me with his shadow jutsu. But he isn't here now, so what? His body then turned towards the female blonde, and he saw that she was using some sort of strange seal. Naruto looked over at Ino in something resembling surprise, shock, and wonder. Ino, what the hell did you do? Ino kept her eyes locked on Gaara. Mind imitation jutsu. I finally perfected it. She walked up to Gaara, which only took half the time it would take as he walked to her as well. Now you listen up. I don't care if you are the case cage, Hokage, Kamikage, or any other cage that might exist. You will not jeopardize my perfect Anbu mission record just because we were caught a little off guard. I swear to the gods, I will make sure that you spend each and every day of your life regretting the day you crossed Yamanaka Ino. So, what did ya say to that? Gaara spoke in a voice that was far too calm for his current situation. Uzumaki Naruto, is she always this scary when she gets angry? Naruto stared at the case cage in awe. He had a lot of balls calling Ino scary right in her face. Oi, Gaara, you really aren't in any position to be saying things like that. Gaara turned his attention back to the blonde-haired mind user, and smiled his small, confident smile again. I thought you Konoha ninjas had a sense of humor. Ino was so shocked by his words that she unknowingly released her jutsu's hold on his mind. You can't possibly mean. Gaara simply nodded his head and said, I was kidding. Naruto dropped face first, while Ino remained froze at his words. Gaara shook his head. These last few years have done a lot of good for me. I have found my humanity. something that I believed never existed before. And now that I have a firm hold on it, I wish to enjoy it as much as I can. Naruto stood back up and nodded his head, completely understanding what he was saying. I see that, and I suppose that we should be congratulating you for that, then. By the way, how are things going with the villagers? Gaara retook his seat behind his desk. The council still has some slight misgivings about me, but at the very least, they don't see me as a potential threat to the village anymore. Of course, the younger generations have accepted me to a much greater extent than I could have ever imagined. The rest of the village is still somewhat split down the middle as far as I'm concerned, but at the very least, no one outright hates me anymore. Naruto couldn't help the smile that came across his face. Good for you, Gaara. I have already sent the mission report to your Hokage, so if you don't mind, I would like for you to stay the night here. You can use the guest rooms in my mansion. Ino, finally recollecting herself and being the more refined of the two, bowed to the Case-Cage. Thank you, Case-Cage-sama. Now, if that is all, I would like to speak with Uzumaki Naruto alone. Ino nodded and turned to walk out of the door to his office. Once Gaara was sure that they were alone, Gaara turned to his friend. What happened to the other girl? The pink-haired one? It took Gaara a while before he could register what he was asking. Oh, Sakura? Gaara already knew that something had happened. He always added the chan to the end of her name. Well, you remember when I told you about how we finally got Sasuke to come back to us? Well, 6 months after he returned, he and Sakura got engaged. If Gaara had eyebrows, one of them would have been raised slightly above the other. Engaged? To him? How did that happen? Don't ask me. I've been trying to figure that one out ever since she told me. But that didn't truly do it for me. No, my affection for her officially ended during a festival at my village. I believe her exact words were, all he had for me was a little kitty crush. That is all it ever was, and that is all it ever will be. Wow, it must have been one hell of a kitty crush for me to constantly put my life at risk for her. Gaara simply nodded at that. She is obviously far too shallow to notice that what you had for her was more than she deserved. It is great that you have moved on. Thanks Gaara, but why did you ask in the first place? I have seen how you act around the mind jumper. Though it may have been brief, I have noticed something between the two of you. So I figured that something must have happened between you and your former teammate. He looked down at his feet. Well, as far as me and Ino are concerned, there isn't really much there. We hang out, talk, eat together, go on missions together, and even play a few pranks on people. He said that last part with just a hint of pride. She kinda reminds me of me whenever I see her start yelling at someone, or when she is ordering ramen. I guess I should have noticed this a long time ago, but I was so wrapped around Sakura that I shut every other girl out. Even Hyuga Hinata, the only person in my class who actually liked me. Gaara stared at Naruto, somewhat pleased that he was talking about this with him. I see. Tamari once told me that we only realize our biggest mistakes in life in retrospect, when it is already too late to change or fix them. The only thing that we can do is take what we have learned and apply them to our present lives. You have done that by realizing that, although you spoiled your chance with someone who truly admired you when you were younger, there was still someone there who you had a decent chance with. While she is extremely frightening, the Yamanaka appears to accept you completely. He stopped when he noticed the slight stiffening in Naruto's arms. Unless there is still something about you that she doesn't know. I am assuming that it has something to do with your prisoner. Naruto looked back up at Gaara. I spoke to her once about her family. She had a few aunts and uncles that participated in the defense against the Kyuubi. They had all died slow, violent deaths at his claws. I don't know what would happen if I told her that the same demon that ended the lives of most of her family was trapped inside of me. Too many people that I don't even know, that don't know me, already hate me. I don't want the one person that I care for to hate me as well. You will need to tell her sometime. Gaara stood up and turned to face his village. And truth be told, I would think that you have a much better chance of her not hating you than you think. Like you said, the people who hate you are the ones that don't know you, the real you. She has had her whole ninja life to get to know Uzumaki Naruto the person, not Uzumaki Naruto the demon container. And once you tell her, you will find it easier to tell everyone else. He turned back to Naruto. But the more you wait, the harder it will be. He held up a hand and created a ball of sand. The more you allow the hate to stop you from speaking, the heavier the burden will become. He gathered more sand into the ball, making it bigger and bigger. You had to tell someone, allow all of the hate to be let go, and let the burden. He released the sands, letting them fall to the ground. Fall. Naruto let his words jumble themselves around in his head. Gaara did indeed have a point. As the years went by, and he became closer and closer to his friends, the fear of their reactions towards finding out his secret became more and more of a burden on him. Maybe you are right, Gaara. Maybe I have been holding this one in for too long. But I can't do it just yet. I need to know that she won't go berserk when she hears me out. Maybe not now, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not in a week from now, but I will tell her eventually. Gaara nodded his head and sat back down. Good. Now if you have nothing else for me, then you can go now. Naruto bowed to his friend before turning and leaving the office. Guest rooms. Later that night, Yamanaka Ino stepped out of the bathroom wearing a full-body bath robe, glad that the case cage kept his guest rooms as well furnished and stocked as he would his own room. She took a seat on one of the two single beds that occupied the room, removed the robe and went to her backpack for her clothes. She had just gotten her hands on her bra when she heard a knock on the door. Hey Ino, it's me. She smiled at the door. You can come in, Naruto. She heard the doorknob rustle a little and then stop. Ino, are you decent? Of course I am. I wouldn't let you come in if I weren't. She still had her bra in her hand. Naruto opened the door and turned to Ino. Sorry I too. He immediately turned away, squeezing his eyes shut and placing both hands over them. What the hell, Ino? Ino let the laughter come like it was natural. She had heard about Naruto's 2.5-year venture with the legendary Sannin, Jiraiya, and was well aware of his overbearing perverseness, as she had been in the bathhouse when she was caught peeping in a few months back. She had always wondered if Naruto had let some of his teacher's perverted nature rub off on him, so she attempted to exploit that theory every chance she got. And although he had proven himself to be the gentleman that he claimed to be, she always got a kick out of seeing his reactions to her provocations. We agreed to no secrets between us, so why shouldn't we be able to see each other naked? She finished snapping on her bra and fished out her panties. That's not the same thing, Ino, and you know it. He moved his way across the room towards his own bed, placed his bag down and fished out his own pajamas. Are you at least halfway decent now? Yes, I am. She pulled her panties the rest of the way up her legs. He turned to see her and sighed. You know, there are some who would think that your openness with your body is somewhat degrading to your gender. Maybe, but you aren't one of them, and since I'm only this open with my body towards you, then it doesn't really matter what they think, now does it? He kept his mouth shut at that. Mainly because there was nothing he could say to that. True, he didn't find her exhibitionist activities that degrading, just slightly annoying. He just went to the shower, pajamas in hand, and closed the door. But not before Ino was able to give him a mental tag. It was another little technique that Ino had developed during the time she spent creating the mind imitation jutsu. This one simply put a small fraction of her mind into whomever she tagged, allowing her to communicate with them psychically. Though she didn't use it unless she had to, this time was special, as there was something that had been buzzing inside of her mind for a while now. Hey Naruto, you mind if I ask you something? Naruto, who had just entered the shower, already knew about this method of communication, as she had tested it out on him first, as she did with most of her jutsus. He also recognized that her tease fest was now over, and she was actually being serious again. What's up? Ino had just slipped into her own pajamas, a pair of short and a t-shirt. Well, the case cage said that most of his good happenings were attributed to him getting a good night's sleep for the first time ever. How does a guy go his whole life without ever going to sleep? Ah, that's right. You didn't know about Shukaku before now, did you? He started washing his body off. Well, Shukaku is one of the 9-tailed beasts. Theoretically, he should be the weakest, seeing as he is the one-tail beast, but trust me, he is nowhere near as weak as that. He was sealed inside of Gaara, which gave him an immense chakra boost, but also came at a price. See, Shukaku's strength can only be contained while Gaara is awake. If he falls asleep, Shukaku gets let out, and all hell breaks loose. Because of that, ever since his birth, Gaara has had to stay awake, keeping Shukaku's massive strength sealed away. Ino actually stopped everything she was doing to listen to this story. Oh my god, he had to stay awake just so he didn't unleash that monster? Why did he even have him sealed up inside of him in the first place? Naruto finished his shower and stepped out to dry off. Power. The sand village was in a tight spot, so the case cage back then ordered that Shukaku be sealed up inside Gaara, thereby turning him into the village's greatest weapon of mass destruction. And considering how much everyone hated him because of the demon that was locked up inside of him against his will, he willingly became that weapon. Ino noticed, just barely, the slight hint of resentment that was in his voice as he spoke. Not willing to push him any farther, she broke the connection and left it at that. He must really feel sorry for him, for what happened to him. Naruto stepped out of the bathroom, clad in his pajamas, topped off with his frog hat. Ino looked at him and smiled. Sheesh, Naruto, when are you going to get rid of that thing? It just doesn't look right on you anymore. Naruto stuck out his bottom lip at her. When are you going to stop flaunting your body at me? Ino stood and looked defiantly at his. Not until you finally admit that you are as perverted as your teacher. Then I guess this thing is staying on my head, because I ain't going to admit to something that isn't true. He laid down in his bed and covered up. Good night, Ino. Ino sighed and smiled again. Deep down she had to admit that he looked rather cute with his little hat on. Night, Naruto. She lay down in her bed as well. Naruto was asleep minutes after his head hit the pillow, but Ino stayed up for a while longer, wondering about what she had learned today. She would finally go to sleep after lying in bed for a full hour, but not after promising to do a little digging into the past of Uzumaki Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto is a 20 Konoha ninja currently enlisted into the elite ranks of the Anbu. He has an immune system that is equivalent to an entire army of Maida guys after they have opened their 8th gate. Yes, he was a ramen-obsessed freak, but thanks to his partner, he has been eating other foods, so he is nutritionally stable. As much as he despises hospitals, he does still make all of his regular checkups. Uzumaki Naruto was the picture of perfect health, so it should be no surprise that the fact that he had just nearly had a heart attack when he woke up the next morning shocked the hell out of him. At least until he fully comprehended just why he nearly had a heart attack. The morning sun in the hidden sand village didn't come as it did in Konoha. Whereas Konoha's mornings were pleasantly warm, welcoming every one of its inhabitants to a new day, Sand's mornings were with a vengeance, almost as if it was saying, get up. It's time to work. And while the inhabitants never truly mind it, as they are already used to it, if you are an outsider, you will have one hell of a wake-up call waiting for you in the morning. Naruto, however, has been known to sleep like a rock in even the harshest of conditions, so he wasn't at all bothered by this. He would eventually wake up, when whatever ramen-filled dream that he was in had ended. He woke up slowly and, surprisingly, silently. His eyes fluttered open, and he took a deep yawn. He brought his hand up to rib his eyes and then sat up. He was almost completely up when his progress was obstructed by something. Naruto, still in his half-asleep state, could not think straight enough to simply open his eyes completely and see what it was, opting to rest his head against the soft surface. He was somewhat surprised to find that there were 2 of them, but didn't think to question them. He just softly rubbed his head against them, thinking about going back to sleep. All of those thoughts were washed away when a familiar voice, though with a much more seductive tone, snapped him awake. Oh, Naruto-kun, that feels divine. Naruto froze, his face completely white with fear at the fact that his partner was using such a voice with him. Then, after regaining his bearings, his face went completely red. Yamanaka Ino was in his bed, straddling his hips, in nothing but her bra and panties. Naruto knew that he had to do something. He ran through his options. If he were Jiraiya, he would have begun groping her right off the bat. If he were a faggot, or even that bastard Sasuke, he would have been annoyed at her actions and told her to get off. If he were normal, he would have simply asked just what she was doing. However, he chose, subconsciously, to go the Uzumaki Naruto route. Had Ino not been a ninja, she would not have been able to react as fast as she did towards Naruto's reaction. He let out an extremely loud yell and literally launched himself out of his bed, which of course caused Ino to be thrown from the bed as well. Ino was able to land on her feet on the ground, while Naruto fell right on his butt, and began crawling backwards until he made contact with the wall. He then raised a finger towards Ino, and in a very loud, very shocked, and slightly pissed voice, said, "What the hell are you doing, Ino?" Ino was on the ground, on her side, clutching her stomach, laughing harder than she had ever done before. She had never seen her partner react so strongly towards her advances before. It was loud, forceful, and completely out of proportion of her actions. And it was downright funny. Naruto simply sat there and watched as his partner literally rolled across the floor, looking like she was going to die of laughter. "Oi, Ino, it wasn't that funny." Ino finally toned down her laughter enough to start speaking in a language that was considered understandable. "Are you kidding? You should have seen your face. It was worth 1,000,000 ryo. Far better than Sakura's. And guess what? I finally proved that you were indeed a pervert." Ino brushed a strand of hair away from her eyes, and then turned back to her partner. "I wasn't talking about that. I felt you." Naruto looked at her, his face a complete mask of confusion. "I mean, it was kinda hard not to feel you." Ino continued to prod him on. "My oh my, Naruto-kun. I didn't know that you were so big. I actually thought that you were really small, since you never wanted me to see you naked." Naruto finally stood up, not willing to sit through this torture anymore. "I am not a pervert. I am going to get dressed. We are going to eat breakfast, head up to see Gaara, and then we are heading home. I suggest you get ready." He grabbed his clothes and walked into the bathroom, slamming the door shut. Ino giggled a little more before getting up and dressing herself in her regular purple clothing. "So that is how you get under the skin of Uzumaki Naruto, eh?" She stored this info for later, as she was sure that she would probably need it sooner or later. Naruto emerged from the bathroom, dressed in his regular clothing as well, and after packing both of their bags, they left the room to finish up what little business they had to while in the Sand Village. Road. Naruto looked like he had been thinking even since they had left the Sand Village. And after a few hours of this, she had finally asked him what was thinking about. He said that he was wondering why he was so quick to forgive and forget about all of Ino's body flaunting when it came to him, and had come up with an acceptable conclusion. He couldn't stay mad at Ino simply because she wasn't intentionally trying to make him angry. Ino was just being Ino, and as much as it annoyed him, he wouldn't have it any other way. "And, there is another reason. You help me forget about things." Ino was definitely confused by this, and asked Naruto to explain himself. What he told her made her heart flutter slightly. Many people said that Naruto's special ability was not his high chakra capacity, super fast healing ability, or even his ability to adapt to any situation. No, his special ability was his ability to promote deep change within everyone he meets. Ino remembered witnessing this firsthand during their Kaima extermination mission in Ocean Country. The Kaima, who turned out to be a girl about their age that had experiments done on her, had begun to truly believe that she was indeed a monster. Naruto had been able to convince her that she wasn't, though Ino had yet to figure out how. Now, that same girl had been accepted into Konoha, and went out on missions some of the other Konoha ninjas when the mission area consisted of large bodies of water, though she was not a ninja herself. The experiments had completely shot her ability to utilize her chakra, and even if the Hokage found a way to change her back to her human form, she doubted that she would ever be able to use chakra. Isaribi didn't really mind, however, if she stayed in her current form, or if she could never use chakra. Her abilities allowed her to help people, and that was enough for her. Naruto, using his knowledge of his own little ability, told Ino that she had an uncanny ability to do things that, at first seem annoying and irritating, but in retrospect help the person to forget about their problems and lighten the mood a bit. And since they didn't have any ramen stands back in the Sand Village, Ino went with the next best thing, her body. She never truly means for anything serious to come out of what she does, since she is well aware of the fact that Naruto has not picked up any of his former teacher's perverseness. She just knows how to pull Naruto out of whatever funk he is in. And as much as Naruto wishes that she could have come up with a more subtle way of doing this, he still appreciated her for doing what she does. Ino was now having a hard time believing that Naruto had been single this whole time. When he wanted to be, he could be quite the sweet talker. "Sakura, you idiot, I'd be willing to bet that he gave you quite a few of these speeches when he was with you. Wonder how many times Sasuke has spoken to you like that." Her thoughts soon trailed off when she caught sight of the always welcoming gates of Konoha. "Hey, Naruto, I'll race ya to the gates." Naruto, not one to pass up a challenge, accepted immediately. Then he pulled out a kunai. "I toss this into the air. When it hits the ground, we take off. Ready?" When he saw her nod her head, he threw it into the air. They both got into ready positions. "You ain't beating me this time, Whisker Face." As soon as the kunai hit the ground, Ino took off. And Naruto poofed out of existence, causing Ino to stop and look back to see just what the hell happened. "Oi, Ino." She looked back to the gates and was surprised and annoyed to see Naruto standing inside of them laughing. "Looks like I won this race." Ino ran up to him, steaming like a pot of tea. "You moron, you used Kage Bunshin, didn't you? That isn't fair." Naruto simply laughed. "You don't have to be a Yamanaka to know what one is thinking. I knew you were going to ask for this race before we saw the gates. I just made it so you didn't have any hope of winning." Ino looked like she was about to explode, but calmed down. He was just planning ahead. "I was outsmarted." Naruto then turned to the Hokage Tower. "Well, I'm going to let Ba-chan know that we are back, then I am going to head on over to Ichiraku's for a nice bowl of ramen. What about you, Ino?" Ino smirked. "Knowing you, it won't be just one bowl of ramen. Well, I have a little bit of researching to do, so I'll probably see you tomorrow." She was hoping that he wouldn't inquire as to what it was she was researching, as she was a very bad liar. "Okay, then. Hope we don't have too much to do tomorrow. I'll see y'all later, Ino." And with a whirl of leaves, Uzumaki Naruto was gone. Ino sighed heavily, glad that she didn't have to explain herself to him, then straightened up and turned into the direction of the training grounds. She ran through her list of prospective targets. "Okay, I can rule out Team Guy. Tenten hasn't spent that much time with him. I can't even get to Neji in that uptight Hyuga compound, and I don't think I can stand hearing Lee talk for more than 30 seconds. Sakura and Sasuke are definite no's. I doubt I will be going to them anytime soon. Shika, Choji, and Kiba used to hang out with him, and Hinata had the biggest crush on him. I guess those four will have to do for now. Okay, let's get to work." And in similar fashion to Naruto, she disappeared as well. Training grounds. "No, that's wrong. Try it again, Kiba." Inuzuka Kiba cringed as his sister's voice, loud as ever, reached his ears. She may have been the nicest person in the world whenever she was in her vet mode, but put her in her Jonin vest and ninja clothes, and you have one scary lady. Her training regimens were not particularly demanding, even though they did make him use subtlety and patience to accomplish them, two things the youngest Inuzuka was not known for. Tack on the fact that his sister was practically jumping all over him whenever he made a mistake. This was nothing like Kurenai-sensei's training, where she would walk him through each and every step before letting him try to do it himself. No, Hana gave him a task and told him to do it. This time, she littered the grounds with tons of different scents, gave him a specific scent to find, and said to pick out which warrior from the line of training dummies the scent belonged to. Sounded easy, right? Oh, and most of the scents all smell the same. Hana's logic to all of this was that one day, he might have to go out into the battlefield and, in that sea of people, with all kinds of similar smells floating around in the air, determine the location of a specific person, perhaps the enemy commander or strategist. And while Kiba thought that was dumb at first, when he thought about it, it actually made sense to him. So he couldn't get mad at his sister whenever she scolded him for not getting it right. Instead, he doubled his efforts and pushed himself to find the correct smell. Over on the other side of the field, Hana watched her only brother work at trying to find the correct target, and although she was laying it on him a little hard, she couldn't deny his progress. She had decided to become a professional tracker the minute she got out of the ninja academy, so she had a nice head start towards becoming what she is now. Her brother, however, didn't start until he was 18, was already part of the Anbu when he started his training, and yet had advanced farther than she had in a shorter amount of time. All Inuzukas were natural trackers, but with Kiba, it was almost as if he was born to be a tracker. Though not in front of her brother, this thought constantly brought a smile to her face. He will surpass me. Hana-san, how's Kiba doing? Hana turned around to see Ino running up the path behind her. It wasn't as if the girl's presence surprised her in the least, since she smelt her coming long before Ino ever laid eyes on her. The fact that she was here meant that she was probably looking for Kiba, as he was Anbu along with her. Just fine. Still has a ways to go, but he is getting there. Ino looked out onto the field at Kiba. He seems to be working hard, maybe I should wait. However, the older girl wouldn't give her that opportunity. Kiba, your friend is here. Let's take a break for a while. It was then that Ino realized that Kiba didn't even know that she was here. Kiba looked up from his position, a look of what appeared to be relief on his face, and strolled over to the two ladies. Oi, what's up, Ino? Nothing much, Kiba. I just had a few questions for you, if you don't mind answering them. Kiba looked at her, almost analytically, and then turned to his sister, who had already figured out where this was heading. I'll go see how Akamaru is doing. Hana started walking down the path, leaving the two Anbu alone. Kiba took a seat on a nearby log. Glad that's over for now. Sheesh, you wouldn't think she could be as demanding as that by looking at her. Ino sat across from him. But it is helping you, right? Yay, but let's not talk about it right now. What did you want to ask me? Oh, yeah right. Well, it's about Naruto. Ino was silent for a moment, wondering just how she would phrase this. I have been hanging out with him for a little while now, and although most of the time he is his usual self, there are times when he just seems to get depressed for no reason. And when I try to ask him, he just waves it off as nothing, saying it will be okay. Kiba thought for a moment, remembering some of his own experiences with him. I know what you mean. I used to hang out with him a lot even before we entered the academy. I saw how he was treated by some of the adults of the village, mine included. I am somewhat relieved that my mom saw the error of her ways after the first time we had to go and try to get back that Uchiha bastard. But the thing that got me the most was that he never complained about it. At least not that I saw. It was like he used their hate for him to grow stronger and stronger. Ino nodded her head. He is usually pretty open about himself. You should have seen him talk about everything that he did as a genin. There was one time, though, that he was particularly vague. When I asked him about why he was friends with the Case Cage, he simply said that they had more in common than we know. And that was it. Kiba would allow the fact that the Case Cage was friends with Naruto process itself later. Right now he pondered over this new bit of information that Ino had presented him with. And you want to know just what that thing is? Naruto's been keeping some sort of secret from me. From all of us. The only ones who actually know of this secret apparently are the adults, and they don't appear to wish to tell us. I was hoping that you might know about it. Kiba sighed deeply. I wish I could help you out there, but I was trying to figure that part out myself. I couldn't find out anything. I even tried picking at Hinata's brain. You know about her crush on him, how she would follow him around, just so that she could watch him. And she said that she never noticed anything strange about him. He never gave away anything that would explain just why he wouldn't talk about certain subjects in detail. Ino looked down. Well, I guess I can scratch Hinata off of the list then. Only other people I can ask are Shikamaru and Choji. Kiba looked up at her. Hey, if you need help, let me know. I'll be sure to do whatever I can. Thanks, Kiba. I'll see y'all later. She stood up and walked back down the path. Kiba watched her leave for a while, thinking that it was amazing that she was still single after all of this time. Then he lay back on the log and closed his eyes, determined to get as much sleep as he could before his sister came back. Hilltop. On top of a hill not too far away from the village, two ninjas were currently engaging in their favorite respective activities, eating and cloud watching. Akamichi Choji was currently surrounded by every snack known to man. From chips to cookies, there was no shortage of snack food that escaped his grasp. To some people it was a wonder that the boy wasn't any larger than he was. Choji attributed it to his ninja training. Nara Shikamaru. It wasn't surprising that he was here, lying on the grass looking up at the clouds, to anyone who knew him, or at least knew who he was. He had stuck his team with some team-building exercise, just something to keep them out of his hair long enough to enjoy watching the clouds go by. His team was almost a direct imitation of the former Team 10. His cousin, Nara Shikaru, was just as lazy and almost as smart as he was. He had given the same IQ test that Asuma Sensei had given him to Shikaru, and the boy came up with an IQ of 185. Choji's cousin, Akamichi Chogen, ate just as much as his older counterpart, was about the same size that Choji was when he was a genin, and had just about the same reaction that Choji did to a specific word. Yamanaka Inoria was just as loud, twice as annoying, and 10 times as troublesome as her older sibling. The fact that she could probably kick the other two boys' asses in a serious fight only made her that much more troublesome. See, while she was naturally gifted, the first Yamanaka prodigy in ages, that didn't stop her from working hard to improve upon the skills that she was lacking in. Specifically, her taijutsu. She worked as hard as anyone had ever seen one from her family work. It all paid off when she graduated as the #1 rookie of her class. And as a Yamanaka, she was quick to loudly, and frequently, remind everyone of that. Her favorite target was her sensei. Oi, Shika, Choji. Almost as if the universe were working against him, He turned his head to see the purple-clad figure of Yamanaka Ino running up to him. Sheesh, what did I do to deserve this? Maybe you should be more active, go and train with your students. After all, the other two aren't machines like Inoria. They aren't going to spend their every waking moment training. Ino had by then reached her two former teammates. What's this about Inoria? You aren't mistreating her, are you? Shikamaru scoffed at her comment. Please, it would be far too troublesome to try to mistreat her. Besides, if anything, she is the one who is mistreating me. Ino had to give her sister credit. She wasn't completely buying into Shikamaru's lazy orders and was forcing him to at least attempt to do his job. Many wondered whether or not she would have been jealous of her younger sister, since she had the potential to be a far better kunoichi than she was at a far younger age. Ino, however, was proud of her sister, though she would never really show it to anyone but her sister. Good. That means she is keeping you in your place. And how about you, Choji? I'm going to be heading out soon. Dad said he has a bunch of old friends that are in something of a bind, and he's getting permission from the Hokage to let us go and help out. I see. Then I'm glad I caught you before you guys left. I need some info and I was hoping that you two could give it. Shikamaru's eyes perked up at that. You are actually asking me for info? Are you sure that you are Yamanaka Ino, the second loudest ninja ever, next to Naruto? She held her anger in check long enough to get out her next sentence. Yes, Shika, I am, and it's funny that you should mention Naruto, since he is the subject of my curiosity. Shikamaru sat completely up at this. Oh? And what, exactly, do you want to know about him? Well, you two used to hang out with him when he was little, and during our time as ninjas. Did he ever tell you anything weird? Something he hasn't told anyone else? Shikamaru eyed her somewhat suspiciously. What are you getting at, Ino? Do you really think that he would keep something from us? Ino inwardly cursed. Either he doesn't know, or he doesn't plan on telling me. Well, whenever I would touch on a certain subject, he would become particularly vague, and would try to drop the subject completely. I let it go for a while, hoping that if I gave him time he would tell me. But the Yamanaka clan has not been known for their patience. He sighed and looked back up at the clouds. Unfortunately, you are going to have to wait. The reasons behind all of this date back to when the Sandaime was in office for his second run. He made a rule, which is still enforced by the Godem, that whoever divulged a certain piece of information concerning Naruto to anyone who didn't would die. Ino felt a rush of air fill her lungs. Die? Just for saying something? What could possibly be so bad that the Hokage would really kill someone for saying it? The heck if I know. At any rate, the only way you will know is if you can find out for yourself, or if he tells you. And at the rate he is going, I would expect the former happening before the latter. Choji finally decided to interject himself into the conversation. Why don't you just jump into his mind? Ino shook her head. No, I want him to feel like I trust him. I want him to trust me. If I do that, then what does that say for our trust? Ino, face it, you aren't going to find out any other way. And besides, it's not like he will know about it when you are done. Shikamaru spoke while still facing the sky. Ino was about to say something, but stopped and decided to think about what her friend had just told her. Thanks you guys. I have some thinking to do. She stood up and headed back to the village. Hey, Shikamaru, do you think that she will do it? Choji asked as he stuffed another handful of chips into his mouth. Don't know, don't care. Troublesome girl can jump into the Hokage's mind for all I care. I just want to get back to staring at the clouds. Choji smiled down at his friend and then turned to the bottom of the hill, where he saw three figures running towards them. Leading them was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed miniature of the very same woman that had just left. Doesn't look like you're gonna get that chance. Shikamaru tilted his head up just enough to see a sight that brought only one word to mind. Damn. Village. Ino walked through the village deep in thought, though she divided her attention just enough to make sure that she didn't run into anyone. Ever since she had found out about this problem with her partner, the very first thing that was on her mind was, I won't invade his mind. She already knew that people tended to treasure their privacy, and the last thing that she would do would be invade on her partners. After all, there were some things that people would rather keep quiet about. However, the longer that this went on, the more it started eating away at her, and the more that she simply could not wait for him to gather up the courage to tell her whatever secret he was hiding. The suggestions of Kiba, Choji, and Shikamaru were now becoming more and more welcoming. After a while she finally took off in the direction of Ichiraku Ramen. It was empty, meaning that Naruto had not made it to the stand yet. She positioned herself across from the stand, out of sight of anyone who passed by. Minutes later, Naruto came strolling up from around the corner and sat at the stool, ordering an ungodly amount of ramen. This was it. This was her chance. She ran through the seals and created the window with her hands. She took one more deep breath, preparing her mind for whatever she was getting ready to see. Shintenshin no Jutsu. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.